All right. Hey, that worked.
That worked. That was fun.
Yeah, we're trying a new format today.
Yeah.
Trying to engage with you guys a little bit. So when you get on, just start jumping in the chat and let us know what's going on.
And obviously I forgot that was coming.
That's
so
all right.
I started jumping in. I'm excited to get into chapter
Let's do
2.
this.
Let's do it.
Let's do this.
The family breakdown, it is clear that the family has been, even more so with COVID, we've seen the family really struggle. Certainly. And even before COVID, the statistics out there say that 1 in 4 children will be brought up in a fatherless home. And that has a impact in ministry. That has an impact in the lives of kids and in this concept of making resilient child disciples. The book talks about, starting off with, approximately 50% of American kids will witness the breakup of their parents' marriage. I mean, that's, you want to talk about that stability. The family is the stable place, right?
Mm-hmm.
It provides that place for kids to feel comfortable and to grow and to learn and to be a part of that family community is so important. So when that breaks up, it really disturbs that natural God ordained unit, and so our children are struggling because of it. One thing I wanted to bring out here in this first segment, it talks about the Generation Z and how they are impacted the most by this. And so I want to read a section. When family is insecure, a generation might look elsewhere for stability in life. So because the family home, that network is not stable and it's insecure, they don't find their security there, they're going to look elsewhere.
Right.
They're going to look elsewhere.
Yep.
They got to find that acceptance, that relationship elsewhere. And the book says it means that family is no longer the primary influencer. Wow.
Yeah, that's sad, isn't it?
It's really sad.
But it's true. We see it all the time.
And so if they're not getting discipled at home and growing in the Lord at home, they're going to look elsewhere. And so Gen Z are disciples of and primarily influenced by their peers and by the screen. And we talked about screen discipleship a couple of times ago. But so, we as parents, and I think this is more looking at the parent, but the reality is because of that broken home, the church really needs to stand in the gap.
Yes. Yeah, so I think this is really interesting because we've talked a lot on here. I think it might even come up some last time with Valerie. But we have talked a lot. My heart, obviously, is understanding biblical discipleship of kids starts in the home. That is the most important. And so as a pastor coming to you and even speaking to pastors, we have a great responsibility to train and equip our parents to be able to disciple our kids intentionally and grow them to be resilient disciples. However, we know full well, especially it seems like with Awana, and again, we know that as we're talking about this, hopefully we have people out there who are not doing Awana. We don't want to be just Awana, but we speak in those terms because of where we are. But even they're probably finding the same thing. We used, am I allowed to say this on here, Word of Life? Yeah. When I was a youth pastor, we used Word of Life, and the results were the same, right? Yes. We brought in tons of kids who came in outside of church. There were nights that my wife would be up late because the kids had something going the next day in school, and they needed pencils or they needed paper or so, and mom and dad weren't even helping with that. So my wife was involved with the girls and helping in those ways. Yeah. My point is, we have a great responsibility to step in as a church.
And certainly, gap. And for forever, again, Awana's been around for 70+ years, and again, going back to Awana as an example, and I think it was built in the framework and designed that parents would be there for their kids, helping them, discipling them, and the curriculum was more a tool for discipleship to happen in the home. But now, unfortunately, and we would be amiss to not recognize this, that there's been a dramatic shift. And so leaders in churches, when you're working with these kids, we got to now recognize that they probably coming from a place where they're not getting that discipleship. And so the relationship that is so important to build that community, because they're looking for that. They're looking for that relationship. They're striving for it. So, for you guys out there, what do you see? Are these things, do these things ring true for you and what you're seeing there out in the field, whether you're a parent or a leader in a church and you're connecting with these kids, do you sense the brokenness in their homes? I mean, I know my wife. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, you're fine. Keep going.
Yeah, my wife is in TNT at our church, and she talks about all the time. She talks about the struggles. Actually hearing the brokenness. She was sharing, and I think it's okay to share this, but one of her kids in her group was open up to them to say, "Yeah, we were homeless. We've been homeless for a period of time," and talking about the uniqueness of, sleeping in a shelter and like all these things. And it's just like eye-opening to recognize that, we're working with a generation here that doesn't have the fundamentals that maybe we grew up with, within a stable home.
Well, so I was going to say, you asked for what are our experience, and guys, drop it in the comments. Let us know. But here's what I see completely different from Awana now to when I grew up. When I grew up, and it wasn't just me, it was the common thing. We brought the books home. You worked on your verses at home. Parents taught you why. It wasn't just about memorizing the verse. It was about knowing what it meant, right? And that was the parents that were teaching you that. Now, here at our church, our books don't even go home with the kids.
Okay.
Because they won't come back.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a totally different dynamic.
Definitely.
And so, we try to work with our kids, with my kids personally, but it's in some ways it's better that they just are a part of what the other kids are doing, so the other kids don't feel left out.
Well, and
right?
we made a dramatic transition the past 5 years, 6 years, where the kids, it's that Together We Move model, where you don't have the kids in the corner that came or are coming on Wednesday night. They're sitting in the corner because they didn't have any time to prepare their verses. Right. So now this concept that we're working together.
We had a rule that if in our Awana,
yeah.
I don't know the way it was for you. You grew up in Awana.
Yeah.
So if I didn't say a verse, if I didn't pass a section, I didn't play games.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if that was, but they wanted, and it was. I mean, it wasn't often, right? I had generally, but I remember a time or two sitting there.
Yep.
And I didn't really. It didn't come across wrong to me. I don't deserve to play. I just didn't do what I was supposed to do, right? Exactly. It is what it is. If you did that now, you'd never have games because of just the kids that you have coming. So, yeah.
TJ, many parents have their own Minecraft and robot builds. Spend hours with their kids. Yeah, and that we talked about screen disciples last time and meeting our kids where they're at. That's definitely the truth. So, one quote I wanted to pull out of here, have we effectively trained and equipped parents to be able to disciple their own children and live up to the expectations of their place as primary in their children's spiritual foundation? I think the answer is we haven't.
Right.
We haven't.
Right.
And that's part of the conversation as a church, helping the parents know how to do that.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to lean into as a church, and the Lord has really burdened me with that, especially through this book, as saying, all right, we really need to intentionally start trying to not only for me, because it's a struggle for me to disciple my kids. It's just you get home and you get in the routine, so I have to work at that. But also, am I, as a pastor whose role it is in the church to equip my people, am I equipping my parents to be able to come alongside of their kids? Am I training them? Am I helping them? These things that we've talked about, having these difficult conversations with kids in Awana, parents don't even want to do that.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah.
So are we equipping our parents to have those conversations?
Well, yeah, and what happens when your kid comes home from school and has a question about, let's say, homosexuality or some of these topics that are prevalent.
This is little, right? Little. But
Right.
I was walking through the store with my daughter the other day who's just learning to read.
Right.
And she says, "Daddy, what's wine?" Because she read the sign, right? I've never had to have that conversation. So, it's coming. It's out there.
Yeah.
So, Landon. Hey, Landon, how are you? Landon, lots of stories that I could tell you. Landon and I. Landon was my right-hand man when I was working with the youth here.
Mm-hmm.
Landon's out in Iowa with his wife, and they have a baby now.
Okay.
Finishing up seminary. So
wow.
out at Faith.
Welcome, Landon.
Yeah. So, Landon hit it right on, too. And that's what Valerie hits on here in this book.
Oh, yeah.
That let's not just be a babysitting club.
Oh,
let's
right.
not just give them a good time. because that's a lot of times what it is. So we're not reaching the kids effectively, and we're not reaching the parents.
Certainly.
Right? Yeah. And I think this rings close with Landon because he's preparing to jump into vocational ministry as a youth pastor. So that's right on his heart, is realizing that the parents are part of that.
Becky mentions we use Awana as our bedtime devotions for our kids, and that's
great.
That is great. Yeah. We need to get back to some of that stuff in the homes, certainly.
So that's where I talked about my struggle. Life is busy, right? So tonight I'm going to be here discipling couple of other guys, so I won't get home till later. Then we have dinner, and then we get the kids in bed. So for me, it's been this challenge of where do I find the time, right? And there's no excuse. I'm not making an excuse. I'm just saying that even we can fill our lives with the right things, and then miss the other important
and are
things.
They the right things? I think that's the question.
Yeah,
I mean,
right. Well, we know that
setting
it is.
those priorities.
But the point is now I've got to carve out other time instead of watching a show.
And I've talked to you about
something.
this, and we've shared this before. A lot of our parents, I feel, and even within the church culture, have fallen to the trap that's in the world that sports is the end all, or extracurricular activities just get so busy, so warped up that you're wrapped up in those things that you don't have dinner at the table and talk about those important, resilient conversations with your kids, and you don't have the time to do some of the things. So
I keep seeing floating around social media, different quotes to kind of that idea, and I really appreciate it. It really just points out, it says, don't try to give our kids everything we didn't have, which is what a lot of times sports and all that is.
Right.
Instead, now you're just feeding their life with stuff. Let's teach them to be content with Christ, and then if there's extra stuff, great, but instead, we make church the least important thing.
I mean, let that sink for a minute. And I think I've experienced that in some of my relationships with people. They've come back to sports,
right?
But they haven't come back to church,
right?
And it's like,
or it's just, well, I'm sorry, I won't be here, Pastor, for. We've got summer league and we've got games and practice on Sunday, so we won't be here for 3-4 weeks.
And then you lose that member of the church.
Well, what are we teaching our kids? We're teaching our kids that outside things are far more important.
Right. Yeah. And that you were teaching them something.
So really, we could say breakdown of the family is more than just breakdown of
father,
I mean,
the structure.
We can have a intact family that's still broke down.
Yeah. And not being effective in what we're called to do. Yeah.
So I would want to really kind of we touched on it when we had Valerie on, but I wanted to lean into it a little bit more here. Because I'm preaching through Acts, and we're in Acts 16. So we just came through the first part of Acts 16 where Paul meets Timothy, right? So as Paul meets Timothy there, we see that Timothy was a kid who came from a broken home. And I don't know that I ever really picked up on that until this time studying through, right? I know his mom and his grandmother taught him the word. I know that his dad was a Greek and was unsaved, and scholars figure probably dead by the time Luke is writing Acts. But when you think about, his mom was a Jew, his dad was a Greek. That was disobedient to the law right there for a good reason. Yeah. So now he had to deal with, he wasn't fully a Jew. He wasn't circumcised. He couldn't fully worship with the Jews, so he didn't fit there. He wasn't a pagan like the Greeks, so he didn't fit there. There's a reason that Paul continuously writes to Timothy to encourage him, because he was a emotional wreck because of his life growing up.
His family was broken.
Yeah. So we see this picture of a broken family, and then what happens? Paul comes alongside of him and calls him Timothy, my son.
Yeah.
Now we have a biblical father figure, a family. So what I've encouraged our people as I preached through that was exactly what we're talking about here. You don't have to, number one, you don't have to have, if your family's broken, that doesn't need to break you. Right?
Certainly.
You can find a spiritual father or mother figure. You can find that spiritual family through God's family. And also, we have a responsibility to be Paul's and reach out to all of these kids.
Certainly.
And, you see those kids and you see their brokenness and you get frustrated with them on Wednesday nights. Maybe they just need some love.
I know.
And some guidance.
Yeah, and it becomes more of a, boy, this is a problem child. Well, I mean, and
who's taught them?
Right.
Who's come alongside and cared enough to teach them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do they? I mean, it's not that we went on excuse their behavior,
right?
But yeah,
right. But I found in youth group when we would step up and make those hard decisions and discipline our kids. I mean, whatever that meant, right? Like,
certainly,
hey, you're not involved. You've been a complete disruption during youth group. You're going to come sit over here by this leader, and you're not going to play. You've got to get it together. When we started doing that, they really appreciated that.
Oh, yeah.
And very seldom did it drive them away. Usually it built their relationship for us. And eventually they realize, hey, these people love me. They want to teach me. And they receive that. Yeah,
that loving, caring adult. We talked about that.
Yeah, so important.
So important. Yeah. Well, is this ringing true to anybody out there? Would love to have you engage or ask questions regarding this. But, obviously the family is not, the structure of the family is not getting any better.
Right.
And so as a church, we need to recognize that and understand that that's got to be, we got to step in that place and fill that gap.
So let me ask you this, those of you who are watching, how many of you or what ways is a better question. What ways have you maybe used to be that loving and caring adult and stepping in this way? And it might be as simple as, like I said, one of my leaders actually, it was Landon's dad who just said one night, he just decided, I'm not worried about the verses. I want to learn these kids' lives. And so he just started asking them questions and being a loving and caring adult.
Yeah. Well,
had great fruit from that.
Yeah. One of the authors actually of this book, Chris Marchand, as well as some of the curriculum within Awana, he shared with us at one of our conferences, actually in Grand Rapids, we had a couple of years ago, that, for the first 3 or 4 weeks into the club year, he didn't even open the book.
Yeah. Right.
He just built relationships.
Are we allowed to do that?
Well, Chris did, and actually Chris did pass recently, and that's been a shocker. But yeah,
I think that was I saw that. I didn't realize that's who that was.
Yeah.
But
praying for their family.
I think that's where we've got to, and that's where Awana, even talking to Valerie, it doesn't mean they're going away from memorizing verses and those fundamental things. What it means is we're not looking at this as a program, but rather a tool to help disciple kids. So if you have nights where we didn't get to go through and say sections,
right?
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Right. If we've engaged in a life, that's what's most important.
And being intentional in relational, being intentional in relationship building, and, ensuring that when we come into that church or wherever we're coming in to do that time with these kids, that we are ready to, actually be listening to the Spirit in our conversations with these kids, and being open to having those tough conversations and helping them become more resilient in their relationship with the Lord.
Most of our leaders, and this is where I appreciate that I was a bivocational youth pastor, because I understand this, right? I got out of work. It was general. I mean, work can be stressful, busy. I traveled a half hour, so now I'm fighting traffic. Even if I had a good day at work, I didn't have a good trip home, right? I'm fighting traffic. I get home, no dinner, and I got to go right into youth group. And that's the way most of you as leaders are, right? Some of you don't have to deal with that, but many of you do. And so now we have to be very intentional to, even if it's 5 minutes or 30 seconds or whatever in the car, to just breathe and say, okay, let's spend a minute in prayer and recalibrate, refocus, so that we are not just in this, all right, I just need to get through this and go home. Instead, we're realizing that we have this 1 hour or in our case, an hour and a half with these kids.
Right.
And we need to make it count, because sometimes that's all we have, especially if we're not living out what we're learning in this book.
Right.
Because that was the other thing. I made a note there when it talked about the parents or the church stepping in for the parents. This has to be more than a Wednesday night or whenever you do your youth group or whatever. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. Like I said, I mean, I remember nights my wife would be like, "Oh, I got to run to town." I'm like, "Where are you going?" It's 8, 9 o'clock. Well, so-and-so needs this or that. And mom and dad aren't there to do it.
Right.
So,
stand in that gap.
But man, the relationships we built, we still have relationships with those kids to this day. They're adults. And
because you took the time.
We were there.
And you invested.
Exactly.
Yep.
So that's what we need to do. That's when we talk about this, that's what resounds with me, is just the amount of effort that it's going to take to start. Maybe it's having the kids over on a Saturday to do something with them,
Yeah, and I've heard of churches having their leaders actually outside of Wednesday, writing notes, doing phone, giving phone calls outside of that hour and a half or hour you have with the kids and build those deeper relationships and show that we care and invest some extra time in building those connections so that when you have those moments where you can talk and really dive in God's word and find the answers, and they're going to listen.
Right.
Because they know you care.
Right. Well, that's what I found. The more time I spent with the kids as a youth pastor,
Oh,
then
yeah.
I could sit down and really kind of have those hard conversations with them because they knew I wasn't just.
And they eat that up.
Yeah.
Again, they're looking for that.
They want that.
They want it.
Yeah. Yeah. So challenge you guys to be thinking about that. What is it going to take for the church to stand in the gap? What is it going to take for us to start reaching out and doing those things?
Yeah. Well, should we move on to
Let's move on.
the church decline?
Yeah, the church decline.
Really finish. Yeah.
Heavy chapter this
heavy.
week.
Yeah, this is
For
heavy
this month.
stuff, certainly. And, it talks about 100 to 200 churches close their doors on a given week. And that was pre-COVID, right?
It's probably worse
It's probably more challenging now.
I just saw on Twitter a pastor, I think it's a pastor. Anyway, he said he personally knows 28 pastors who are looking to transition out of the ministry, not even looking for another church, but out of the ministry.
Well, you as a pastor, I mean, this has been a challenging, tough time as a pastor, because in a lot of this, and as I talk to pastors, there's no right answer.
No, every church is different, and I think that's what we've got to remember. And really that goes with discipleship. You and I were talking about this just before we came on. As we disciple our kids, every church is different. What does that look like? Every church is different, and COVID is the same way. When this first started, I was talking to all my pastor friends. What are you doing this week? How are you going to do that? And we were kind of learning from each other. But once you get going, you realize, like we had about 3 weeks where we were online only, and a pastor friend of mine who's right down the road, they were just coming back to in-person service. So you can't look at them and go, well, they're doing it, that's what we've got to do. So there's a challenge. In a lot of ways, you feel like you're going at it alone. Now, for me, I was able to surround myself with pastors who are very like-minded, and that helped encourage me.
Yeah, and I think they're on the other side of the coin, too, as far as churches understanding. It seems like from COVID, there's been a significant turnaround in our churches as far as, okay, we're getting back to ministry, and I think our families and parents and as a whole are looking for that connectivity. They're coming back to the church, and it's an exciting time. And who knows where the Lord's going to take this? We might see we might be on the tip of a revival.
Well, and I think most churches have come to the place where the Lord basically stripped them of everything they had.
Oh yeah, right down
to the simplest thing.
Exactly.
And now what do we do? I was just talking to a pastor who was in that boat. He said, God took away our diamond, our they were a very much Sunday morning service central church, and when God took that away, they had to learn how to operate again. And God used that to show them that obviously being in church on Sunday morning is highly important. That's not all that church is about, right? Which is exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But God has used that. It's been a tough time. It's been tough for a lot of people. I was just actually talking to a pastor through Instagram the other day and said, man, I am thankful for the things the Lord has been teaching me over the past several years through disciple making and understanding biblical disciple making. And that just has brought a real clarity in my mind. It's been tough. I've had days that I've been frustrated. I have not been discouraged, right? I see these pastors who are just discouraged and burned out. And I'm thankful for the clarity. I'm thankful for the purpose the Lord has shown me. And guys, I'm just going to bare my heart for you for a minute here. It's all centered around disciple making, which is exactly what we're talking about here. So the more you lean into this, the more churches lean into this, the more Awana and youth leaders lean into this, the more purpose and clarity and understanding. And it's not just following a program. You got to get in the Word, and you got to understand what is biblical disciple making. Why am I doing this?
It goes way beyond the church building.
Exactly.
Sunday morning.
Yep.
And I know the book talks about, the average church member or attendee that's a faithful church attenders 1.7 times a month.
Yeah.
And so you got to recognize that those relationships and the discipleship has to happen outside
Well,
of the church building.
what you see too is, and I can tell you this from personal experience, the more the church leans into disciple making, the more people are in church on a regular basis. Because if I know that I've got to sit down with you and have a Bible study and teach you, and again, it's not just about Bible study, right? It's life on life. But if I've got to lead you, I can only lead you as far as I am, right?
Yeah, right.
So now we're seeing our people are hungry. They want to be in the Word because they know I'm going to have to lead this other person and disciple this other person. Yep. It brings such a health to your church, and we're excited to be seeing that. And again, that's why this book is so encouraging to me, and this is why I want to do everything I can to get as many pastors and churches to understand biblical disciple making. That's why we're here, right? We've talked about this so much that Scott said, PJ needs to read this book, right?
Read it, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, we kind of got derailed there on church decline, but church is declining even more so now.
I think so, yeah.
Because of this discouragement and this
seems like the churches that have become more, they might be becoming more healthier out of this, though, I think, as you were talking about, that some of the churches just didn't make it. But then there are others that through this that have blossomed, that are starting to come back to, okay, well, what's important here,
right?
And I think that's so. There is something I think that's come out of COVID that's a positive thing. But
even the ones that didn't make it, here's what I'm seeing, and other pastors, if you're watching, I mean, you can agree or disagree, but God is sifting and trying by fire, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there's
it's
a
happening.
reason some of these churches are
are
gone. Yeah, Trapper, you said this is a great idea. What specifically was that you thought was not that great idea?
Full of great ideas.
I'm just curious what struck with you there. And so as we keep moving here as well, there was a lot here that I really thought about and that resounded with me. Especially we talk about these the amount of kids that leave church.
Yeah,
that's something that as a youth pastor, I was thinking a lot about. As a pastor, I continue to, Pastor Mike and I, we have several conversations, right? How can we do this? He says, Becky had a great idea. Yeah, that is a great idea. And that's why we're doing this, right? Again, it's great to see that people are jumping on and helping other people out. This idea of losing kids should be a burden to us at every level. If you're an Awana leader, you need to be thinking about, what am I doing to make this real in their life so that we don't lose them? Because you also lose kids from Awana youth group, right?
Oh, right.
So there's every level that we're losing them. And what I really want to encourage you guys with is, I just kind of wrote it in the book here that, there's like they say 10% of resilient disciples, 10% of our kids are really coming out as resilient disciples. And it can be really overwhelming for us to see these stats and go, how can we change that? How can we change 64% of our kids leaving the church? And we look around at the world, and what I want to do is, and this is how I encourage our people, is I want to pull that together, or pull that focus in. And I want to say this, as we pull the focus in, pull it into your local church.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I can't answer for what's going on in Cadillac at your church, right? Now, it can burden me, and I can be concerned about it. I can pray about it. Ultimately, I'm going to give an account for my church.
Certainly.
So what am I going to do? I'm going to try to encourage. Let's. If I'm pulling in and we're saying, okay, we're going to beat those odds, right? By the grace of God, obviously, there's nothing we're going to do. I'm going to beat we're going to beat those odds as a church, and we're going to trust God, and we're going to do everything we need to do. Then we've made an impact in our Jerusalem. And then if Cadillac's doing that, and other churches are doing that, right? So we can't get overwhelmed. It's so easy to get overwhelmed with reading these stats that are so monstrous.
Right.
And just lean into the people that God put in front of you.
Well, and that's also what I like about this book, because it speaks to that. This Resilient doesn't answer a question. It's not really prescriptive necessarily. It starts to going into, in the next couple chapters, talking about belong, believe, become, and creating an environment, a culture within the church, that would hopefully hold on to the kids and hold on to the teens so that they are part of the ministry. But you're right. Every ministry is so different. And so, we can't really say this is the way to do it per se, because it's going to be different from one church to the next.
Yep.
But as far as building a culture, I think there's some things that can be familiar. And
Right.
We'll talk about
Right.
that as we move into the next
Right.
chapters.
Landon asks here, he says, how do you sustain these ministries with this type of culture, especially with the decline of the church? So I guess I'd like a little more clarification of what ministries are you talking about? Now, as I would read that, I would assume, how are we going to sustain Awana? How
Right.
are we going to sustain youth group? Those kind of things, especially with the decline of the church and the culture that we're in. And that's a great question.
Well, it is, because if they're not there,
Right.
if 1.7 times, that means half the time
Right.
they're not there. How do we build that culture?
So now what we have to do is we have to put in the time, and we have to go outside of ourselves. We have to give up, like I said, what am I doing tonight? I'm meeting tonight with a couple of guys. Why? This exact thing, right? Where it's just they're adults. So what am I doing now? Instead of doing something I want to do, I love doing it, right? But I mean, instead of doing my own thing, I'm investing. Right? We have to do that. We have to invest. We have to understand. I just was talking to a pastor friend of mine this last week. We were sitting at dinner, and he's a church planter, and he said he really struggles with this idea of being called a church planter, partly just because God plants the church. And I said, well, here's the thing. I understand that church planters have different, they have very different challenges than I do with a church that is established.
Right.
But I have challenges they don't, and that, but the point was, I said to him, I said, here's the thing. If any pastor stops looking at himself as a church planter and stops having a church planting culture in his church, they're going to decline. They're going to die. So that's where we have to be. And what is that? That's evangelizing. That's discipleship.
Yeah,
that's what the core. What's the Great Commission?
Yeah, go and make disciples.
And we've got to do it. Jesus says, "I'm going to build my church." And does the culture matter?
Yeah.
No. Culture doesn't matter. You're
okay.
not answering. I know you're not disagreeing with me.
No.
You're not understanding.
But to speak to the culture where they're at.
But is God going to be? Can we say now, right? Landon's saying in this culture. That's what I thought you meant, Landon, clubs and youth group. But in this culture, how do we sustain that? Is God going to quit building his church because of the culture we're in? No. Yeah, I know you agree. Absolutely. We have to be engaged in the culture. We'll talk more about that. But, so we can't use that excuse. We can't say, well, what we've got to do is
hands up and
we've got to sit back and go, okay, if this isn't working, maybe the Bible has something else for us here.
And that's what this book's talking about too, right?
Exactly.
Hey, the things we've done in the past are not working.
Right. They work because the culture allowed them to work.
That culture is different. And how are we now preparing that culture for the future today?
Yeah, exactly.
To be ready for that culture. And it's good.
Hey, David. Good to see you. David's a bivocational pastor in Georgia.
Okay, great. Yeah. This is good. Well, this is a good conversation. And, I'd love to hear anyone to chime in if you have something you want to share on this topic. One thing that the book starts talking about here in the later part of this chapter that I really keyed in on. And again, coming back to our conversation we had before, that it's an investment. Discipleship and doing this right is an investment. And we talked about NASA and they're going to Mars and how much time and effort and money and thousands and thousands of people working thousands and thousands of hours just to get that rocket part put together, just to be a little closer to being in that culture of Mars and getting there, right? Okay, so there are other faith groups that do this really well.
Right.
And the book talks about the Muslims.
Right.
They're building schools.
non-Christian when we say faith groups.
Yeah, okay, exactly. Yeah. Right, yeah.
I knew what you meant.
Clarify
I knew where
that.
you were going.
Thank you very much. But, they're doing well. Why? Because they understand.
They're strategizing,
They've got a strategy. And I know Valerie talked a lot about we need to have a strategy to ensure that our faith is passed along to these kids that are going to be in a world that's going to be against them, right? They need to have that resilience. And how do we build that strategy to make resilient child disciples? I think that's the big question we need to ask.
Well, and some of that answer goes back to exactly what we're talking about, exactly what Landon asked, that we're finding. And that was one of the things when I got to the end of the book that I was like, because as a pastor for years, I had this struggle because they talk about it in there, okay, how are we going to raise up leaders that are going to make resilient disciples, right? Every pastor has this challenge of is finding people to step in and serve. And not only that, now we're asking them to step in and serve more than just on a Wednesday night. We're asking them to actually give more of their life. So how does that happen? How do we strategize? How do we make all this work? And it really is not as hard as it seems. It's hard because it takes time, it takes effort. But if you literally go back to the Great Commission, what we're finding in our church as we build this disciple-making culture, not just with the kids programs,
right,
but from the top down, what's happening? We are naturally having people who are being discipled, who see the value in it. Number one, they want to serve because they have a relationship with the Lord like they've never had before, so they want to serve. And when they're serving, they want to be disciple makers because they've seen the value in their own life.
Right.
So naturally now, as you have, say, for instance, an Awana leader, what is their natural heart going to be? You're not even going to have to teach them to make
it becomes natural.
Right.
It becomes natural.
Naturally, they're going to be reaching out to these kids beyond a Wednesday night.
I think it's also a wake up call, for the church. And I actually preached a couple weeks ago on Romans chapter 11. That we've got to wake up.
Yes,
the church has to wake up. There, and I in my own life, I'm being transparent here. There's a sense of a dichotomy in that my spiritual life is here, and then my life in the world and my secular life is over here. I've got my one foot here in this kingdom and another foot in the God's kingdom. And
we compartmentalize too much.
I think we do, and I think that's across the board. So okay, when a pastor's working hard to try to get those volunteers, it should be happening without him asking.
Exactly.
It.
Yep.
And so that and again, I'm saying for myself, right?
Right. But what you're talking about is what I'm learning in my own life because of our culture in our church. Is there's less and less compartmentalizing in my life, and I'm seeing it less and less in our church. Because we become more and more sold out for Christ. We become, we realize the more you do this, the more you realize. That that this is my life is not my own. I said that again Sunday. We get so worried about our freedom and we forget that our life is not our own. We're not guaranteed freedom. We're Christ. So the more we do that, the more we can lean into these other things. The Lord has really been convicting me with Galatians chapter 6. And probably I've shared it on here because I've been talking to everybody about this just because it's really something the Lord, because disciple making is so hard and it takes so much time. And I actually have come to the point where I have said to people, all right, I have so many people in my life right now that I'm discipling that I just don't have time for more. And then what happened? God gives me more.
Right. Yeah.
So Galatians 6, we always use that passage. You'll reap what you sow, right? Be not deceived. God is not mocked. Whatsoever man sows, that will he also reap. And we use that when I'm challenging you with your sin, right? You be careful. Yeah. Well, Paul says, it's sin, but it's also good things. And then he says at the end of that, he says, so therefore, do good to as many people as you can. In other words, you should be planting seeds everywhere. So now when somebody walks in my office and interrupts my day, right? It's not, it's, hey, here's another opportunity.
Well, that happened just
just before we got on here, right? Exactly. Somebody came and was struggling and needed some help, and we were able to help. And who knows what the Lord's going to do with that. Right. But when we begin to realize that our life is not about us, and if God wants to take minutes or hours or whatever of our day, and we don't get to sit and watch our favorite TV show or whatever it is,
right?
It's not that big a deal. In fact, it's better.
Right.
So we're storing up treasures in heaven. Shift gears a little bit, and maybe you can speak into this a little bit, just to hear from a different perspective. But they talk here in this chapter about our struggle against, you mentioned it. People are in church so little, and they're on the screen so much, right? We talked about screen discipleship a long time ago now.
Yeah.
But that really stuck again with me as part of why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? So what are you seeing? And maybe you guys can jump in here. And, David just did a video about that, by the way. If you guys want to go on YouTube and find David Rowland, he said, give Jesus an open floor plan with your life. David, I don't know if you're still on or not, but I thought that was just a great video of reminding us just to be surrendered. He tearing down all the walls. Lord, you build what you want to build into my day even. But anyways, and you guys who are watching, tell me how you're doing that. Landon's a younger guy. He might even be able to speak into that. How are you seeing leaders engaging. If the kids are going to be on the screen,
right,
why shouldn't we be on the screen?
Oh, certainly.
Right? Now, we might just be a blip on the screen, but at least we're that reminder of being the Word. We're at least doing what we can. And I know for some of our leaders, that's really hard because we're not naturally a person who maybe is on social media all the time.
Well, right. And I think it goes back to, too, at some level that, I don't want to say the church, but there's, even with Christianity, there's like this, if you're on social media, it's like the devil.
Right,
so, and I think at some levels it can be, right?
It can be, absolutely.
It can be a place where you're not going to get encouraged, you're discouraging people, and it can be an opposite thing, but I see it as a tool. And so, helping our leaders and parents, especially parents for sure, connecting and make sure that they're a part of social media where their kids are at.
Right.
But then also leaders and pastors, ensure that you're in that space. And that's tough. And so I've seen it work, but I've also seen many people, I'm just not there.
Right. And that's where I think just that effort of going out of our comfort zone.
Right.
And just doing it.
This
YouTube for me, when I first started, that was way out of my comfort zone, but I've learned to enjoy it. I love doing that stuff now. So how are you, if you guys are doing that, how are you seeing that work? How's that helping? I know I've said different times, even on here, one of the funny things for me as a youth pastor was showing up to youth group and talking to somebody about something that happened in their life that week, and they're like, how'd you know about that, Pastor?
Exactly. Well,
you put it on public media.
Put it there, you put it out there. It actually provides opportunities.
Yeah, like it did, because they would have never told me they were struggling with this thing, but they'll tell everybody else.
And we can be in that space and have an opportunity to have a conversation.
Right.
That provides incredible opportunity for those resilient conversations.
But here's the other thing, and you said it, you have to build the relationship first.
Oh, yeah.
I would not have had the right to speak into their lives in that way if I hadn't spent the time.
Then you sound like you're judgmental.
But I had spent the time. We went to McDonald's, we played basketball, we did everything,
Yep. Got to be invested in their lives.
Yep.
Yeah. And, again, why are we having this conversation? What is, let's go back to the why, because we understand that 2050 is going to be a different world. We've already seen a dramatic change so quickly. And so to have these conversations now, to be talking together, to build this kind of movement to say, what can we do differently? How can we change what we're doing to adequately prepare the kids today to thrive in a culture that's going to be against them, to give them that spine to stand against against the culture, but then also to give them the heart like Jesus and to love.
To engage that culture.
Culture, not to be sent in a bunker.
Right.
Right? Because that might be the easy route, but that's not what we're called to.
Yeah.
And so we got to prepare them to not be shelled in a cocoon.
Exactly.
But to figure out how to live in the world that they're going to be in. And so some exposure may be necessary.
Right. Well, and that's where you have to have those conversations. Like I said, it's little, but when my daughter asked me, Daddy, what's wine? I had a choice. I could have she's 7. Does she really need to know what wine is right now?
Right.
So I had a choice. I could just say, and push that off.
Right.
Or we can start a conversation about
my daughter, like I mentioned before.
Oh yeah, that's what I say. Mine's little compared to what, she's, once they become teenagers.
They get older and those questions become bigger and deeper and yeah.
But the other side of that is, and you and I have talked, like, we need to have a conversation about this at some point, but your kids are in public school, my kids are homeschooled.
Right.
Right? So the beauty of having your kids in public school is they have that exposure, but now you have to be intentional as a parent, like you did, to walk through that with them, right? So now
it's every day.
Right. The other side of that is if my kids are homeschooled, what am I doing? I'm putting them in that bubble. So now I have to be intentional. My wife and I have to be intentional to get them out of that bubble and continue to expose them.
And I would like to talk about that more. Maybe we could unpack that a little bit more, that balance. And I know Valerie talked about that, and I want to bring that out in one of our conversations, because I think it's an important one for us to really digest as we're parents, as we're leaders. Where do we find that balance between protecting?
Yeah, I think we need to do that. Whether we do a live stream like
Just on that?
separate,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
we do something. But I think so. You and I have talked quite a bit about that, and I think there's a lot of value in that because there's I think what we see is two extremes. Parents send their kids to public school and they don't shepherd them whatsoever. They don't teach them and they go off the rails. And then what happens? The public schools are evil and they're wrong. And well, we know they're influenced by the world, so we know what we're sending our kids into.
Right.
But then we have the other side of, okay, we're going to homeschool our kids and we're going to put them in a bubble and shelter them. Then when they leave the home, what happens? Everything falls apart because they were sheltered.
Yeah, there's a
so
balance
you
there.
have to find that balance, and you have to allow them to go into the world and make disciples even as young kids.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. It starts now.
Right. Right.
You know, they got to learn it now.
There's things that my kids are involved in the community. And I will often remind them as they're talking because they enjoy them, right? They enjoy doing those things. And I'm often reminding them, okay, but why do we do this?
Right. And I know our kids are being picked on for their faith in the school.
Right.
And so for them, it's, okay, I got to build this backbone now to understand my faith. This is what I believe. Mm-hmm. This is what the world, and you give them that biblical worldview, right?
So now we go back to, are they going to get that if they're just learning verses in Awana?
Well, right. Yeah.
So, and who's going to give them that? If mom and dad aren't giving them that, then as leaders, we need to take that time. Okay, you've just learned a verse.
Right.
How is that going to, how is that going to help you tomorrow in school?
Right. When they're coming at you with this, is that going to be where you
and it
fall?
may be that verse doesn't have anything to do with it. So we throw it out for the night and we speak into what's going on. Yeah.
Well, this has been good.
Yeah, we're just we really need to wrap up, guys. So we very much appreciate you guys jumping on with us today. People were in and out. But that was our fault. We just didn't promote this.
We're going to get it out there next time.
But that's all right. You will be able to find this afterwards. Probably within a couple hours or so, you'll find this on my YouTube channel if you want to rewatch it or share it with anybody. Also, make sure you're sharing our Facebook page. Please feel free to jump on Facebook and have these conversations just like we saw today. I love that, Becky says, hey, we're using the book for devotions.
Yeah.
And Trapper says that's a great idea. That's what we want our page to be.
Again, this isn't for us.
No. That great idea was not ours. So that's good. That's what we want. So anyways, next week, we're going to dive into chapter 3. A great chapter. So grab the book, read along, share this with your friends, encourage more pastors, encourage more parents, encourage more youth leaders and kids ministry leaders to watch with us.
All right. Did you get a Mother's Day gift for your wife?
Not yet. No. We were just trying to survive COVID.
Okay. I know it's way off topic, but Sunday, right? It's here.
Yeah, I have not wrapped my mind around even being ready to preach Mother's Day yet. So.
Okay, well, we'll pray that you get there. Yeah. I got my wife a blender. She actually wanted one.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
I kept the kids alive while she had COVID. Maybe that's good enough.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Whew.
All right. Thanks so much.
Yes.
We'll see you next time. Hey, if there's anything you guys want us to talk about, let us know. Drop it on our Facebook page, whether we do it during one of these live streams or we do a separate video or live stream.
Yep.
We'd love to talk about whatever might help you. See
Bye,
you
guys.
next month.